This is the 5th episode of the Uprising series, and boy oh boy, do we have a story for you. We are sitting down with Tasha Smith, founder of Emerge Sales Training, who's going to take us through her journey from a $1.4 million business to having to lay off her entire team. Yep, you heard that right. Tasha's going to dive deep into how imposter syndrome and savior complex can be two sides of the same coin. Yikes. The importance of believing in yourself when others believe in you too, and how our failures can actually make us better coaches and mentors. And stick around to the end because Tasha is going to share some golden nuggets on sales confidence that every entrepreneur, yes, that's you, needs to hear. My name is Deidre Shen, CEO and co-founder of Capshow, the fastest way to create content that helps you get more leads, and this is Win the Content Game.
Okay, so we're talking about the hard stuff, but I want to start off with just a little bit of context. When I started my sales training company, my best friend had just gotten laid off. We were in our corporate jobs and I was driving a lot, and I was like, I could probably take all my friends and we would go out and be able to do something really awesome. And I was a sales manager, as were my friends. And so I thought, well, we only know how to do one thing, teach salespeople how to sell things. So I guess that's what we'll do. So I left my job and wanted to run my sales training company. I had been, at that point I was 35, so I had been in sales or sales leadership since I was 20 years old. So 15 years full-time sales or sales training or management. And so I was like, okay, let's go out and do this. And I mean, I did the whole thing in the beginning, like I didn't know anything. I was negative. I hired a coach, and that could be its own story, but I think that you want something juicier than that. So our first year we did $42,000 in sales, which I think is not bad for a coach. I think the average coach sells $55,000 a year. And then we blew up through word of mouth. So there's a lot of people out there that think sales is awful and that sales trainers are terrible. But if once we got our message out, and it's like sales could be authentic, compassionate, and incredibly effective, it takes hold. So we hit an industry where our word of mouth went absolutely insane. No, 42, 80. It's been a long time. That was 2016. 82 the first year, and we grew to 1.4 million. Which I would not wish upon my worst enemy. And so I was so excited, like truly so excited that everything seemed like green lights, but I got pretty sick. Part of it was I didn't know what what the magic was. I didn't have awareness around there. I was, an above average sales manager, an above average sales rep, but mostly through learning, not really through initial, what you would consider like a natural. I like people, I could read papers, I worked hard, that's I think, and I was genuine, or hopefully still am. And so that put together a really nice career that was very uncomplicated for me. And so we did really, really well and we grew like crazy, but I didn't have conscious competence around what it was that made me good, because it happened so fast. And so I actually got really horrible imposter syndrome, where every single second I was waiting for someone to figure out that I was just kind of making stuff up as I go. And I don't know if anyone has studied imposter syndrome. Imposter syndrome is literally born out of expert intuition. But I didn't know that at the time. And so people would ask me questions and I would, from my perspective, just make it up. I just pulled it out of wherever. And then they used it and then it worked. And then I was just just waiting for someone to be like, going from, okay, Tasha's brilliant. She's the best sales trainer we've met. Like all of these, every time I got more and more recognition or accolades or word of mouth, it almost had the opposite effect on my mental health, because it was like I felt like I couldn't even fit in my own shoes.
Oh my gosh. This is like, it's like speaking to my heart after what you're saying, because I even as you're talking about it, I'm like, even in my mind, I'm like, I feel like people are going to find out that we're frauds or something. Like, and fraud is a very, like, I don't mean fraud, we're fraudulent, but, you know, in that sense of like that whole imposter syndrome being like, I'm going to get found out. I'm going to get found out in some way. And I think we all feel this. Like, this is so real, what you're talking about.
Well, yeah. And you just, because if you do have experience, you are making it up as you go. You are pulling something I learned when I was 18 with something that I just watched my kid do with some, like, you are pulling all of these pieces together in a way that can't be articulated. And that was really hard for me. And so what I did is I made a lot of moves in order to get out of the spotlight, although I don't realize what that was. And I think so much of the next part I'm going to tell you has to do with a combination of boundless optimism, right? I think entrepreneurs have to be optimistic, risky. You know, for me, my vision, most people are familiar with Zig Ziglar, right? And right around maybe a year or two before I started my business, Zig Ziglar passed away. Nobody fact checked me on that, on the details. And I just remember that they really struggled. Every podcast that I had been listening to was like, well, Dad, here's another clip of Dad. Here's another clip of Dad. They had nothing past Zig Ziglar. When Zig Ziglar passed away, it was over. And I remember thinking, I don't want my business to be that way, which is why it's not TashaSmith.com. It's Emerge Sales Training, because I wanted to build something that would last forever. I wanted to build something that would fundamentally change what the word sales meant, right, in our culture. And so that was like a really, really big thing. And so then it was happening. It was happening at a rate that was like, I cannot even believe it. All green lights, go, 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 go. So I hired a lot of people. Think about that arc. It was 12 times. It just kept getting bigger and bigger every single month. And so I was like, well, one of the things that I think is really important is mentorship, where you can actually answer people's questions. And so we had made a commitment to make our groups not be over 50 people. And we were selling them at $300 at that time, and they were going like hotcakes. So we had to hire coaches. So I did what I initially thought I would do. I went back and I called my friends and I said, leave your corporate job. We're growing like crazy. Do you want to do this with me? And I mean, boom, 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 boom. So then we had a staff of 10 coaches and 5 support people. And that was awesome. And I was living my dream. Now, of course, I was living my dream with a rash all over my chest and neck and 40 milligrams of prednisone and all of that, right, from the imposter syndrome and trying to build this plane in midair. And what happened was our lead flow was organic. So it was word of mouth, business collaboration upon business collaboration upon business collaboration. So like what happens next is really has to do with the optimism, the imposter syndrome, and just also being in my second year of business and not understanding a few things. And so since all the lead flow was organic, we didn't have control over it. We had some control. I have strong recruiting or referral generating skills, but at that point, you're doing 100, do 150 a month. I'm not the only one talking to people. And not, again, the unconscious competence, not everyone had the referral generating skill that I learned selling knives when I was in college. So our organic lead flow shut down. We stopped being the hottest thing in that little niche that we had. And it wasn't that we had stopped getting people results. It was just like we were the shiny object. And so when that niche was like, okay, this shiny object is kind of over, it clamped our lead flow. But we had a $100,000 payroll because we were poised to grow to 3 million, because it meant kind of like if you consider all like the pieces, you're like, okay, you went from 80 to 1.4. It doesn't look like it's slowing down. And so I was like, well, I feel like we need to staff for 3 million. I don't think that that is something that most people would be like, absolutely, that's the most insane thing I've ever heard. I wasn't like, I'm going to staff for 12 million. I wasn't right? So we staffed for all that, and the word of mouth shut down. And so then that next summer, my now business partner, Karen, and she was in charge of like basically like a director of sales, and she's like, we don't have the lead flow. And she called me on a Sunday night and was like, you're going to have to lay off half the coaches tomorrow. And I was like, are you kidding? So we were like, I was trying to use my brand. I was trying to use everything I could in order to keep the numbers high enough. And at the end of the day, because we didn't have control over our lead flow, right? I couldn't press buttons and make it consistent. It was in the control of someone else. Those jobs were not stable. So the next year, like if you look at the arc of the company, I left my job in January 2016. We're 2024. We'll cross 5 million next month or the month after, right? If you just look at it, and you see me on camera, you're like, so successful. But there's this blip where we didn't control the lead flow. And so I ended up having to lay off half of our coaches, then lay off half of our ops team, then lay off the other half of the coaches, then lay off the other half of the ops team over the next year, because we relied too much on organic leads. And I think a lot of people, like right now, organic leads is all the rage. I know a lot of the work you do is in the organic lead space, and I get that. I also know that for us to be able to hire, we need predictable lead flow, not lead flow that was dependent on my ability to network, right? Because if I got busy, right, then that means there isn't a job for someone. And so we've been really intentional about making sure that as we grow again, that we get into a space where, we can have more predictable lead flow so that people have secure jobs, and so they're able to do well. So that's my story. I guess you can ask some questions. There's probably more to it that's interesting, but I guess I'm out of feelings right now.
Okay, well, I want to get back. I'm so intrigued about what your strategy is going forward. I feel like entrepreneurs listening to this will be like, I feel what you're feeling, Tasha, but tell me, how are you solving for this? So we're going to get to that. But
Sure.
I want to go back to that place because, I mean, the numbers that you're talking about is no joke, right? It's like 1.4 million is not a joke. Having 10 coaches and I think you said 5 ops people, and it might have grown over time as well during that phase, is no joke, because those are families. Those are like people that you're having to feed. And so, and the fact that you're at the same time battling, your own imposter syndrome, your own feeling of like, I'm going to get found out, in quotation marks, like what did that lead to? Can you talk us through almost like what you were actually feeling in those moments, and like how you almost tried to, because I feel like it's a mental game first.
Oh, well, all of it. I mean, being a coach is its own thing. Like, you're not only in charge of selling and the revenue and all the stuff, you also are the product. So that's a different kind of hell that not everyone experiences. I know you mentioned a lot of coaches and consultants on there. And so you're kind of, going back and forth on the whole thing. I think that imposter syndrome and savior complex are two sides of the same coin, where you jump back and forth. It's like this hyper responsibility, where you are on one side, like, I can save everyone. And what I mean by that is, and I'm definitely more matured and measured now, but kind of like, well, I can teach anyone how to sell. If I can teach 18-year-old kids how to sell $1,000 sets of knives, I can teach a grown-up expert how to sell their services. This is like, there was this piece of me that was like, my company is here to save the world, right? There's like, or to save people's businesses. So there's like this unhealthy savior complex, but then flips, because in your head, you're not, and no one else understood that as the promise, right? But in my mind, the motivation came from, right, that conviction that what we were teaching was so important and so critical. So then the flip side of that was still around this hyper responsibility of, well, then it better be perfect. It better be good. It better be whatever. But I was like, part of my journey, I think, as far as the imposter syndrome shifted, was actually taking a step back and believing people. So I went through this during all of this, right? It was just a lot, right? So I hired great people. We set up an infrastructure to where I wasn't like, we had middle management, one person in charge of coaching, one person in charge of sales, one person in charge of ops. My business coach was killer and gave us 4 calls a week. One for me and one for each leader. So we had a lot of that good stuff going on. But for me, I had to believe people. So I had people that I really respected, super successful people. So we have like some $1 million business owners, and they're like, hey, do you do one-on-one coaching? I want to coach with you, because we were selling our programs. And I had to decide, right? My first instinct was, you're so brilliant and I am such a fraud, you're going to find out. And and this was like fall of 2017, before the layoff was August of 2018. And finally, I just looked at these really, really smart people who believed in me. And I was like, wait a second, if I believe that they are this smart, have this much savvy, maybe they're right and I'm wrong. And that was a weird kind of humility, because it was the humility to be like, I'm wrong, but not in the area I think I'm wrong. I'm wrong because I've assessed this situation improperly due to my imposter syndrome and just straight my lack of experience. Second year of business, I didn't know how to assess myself. All I knew is that my directors in my corporate sales job were always like, more, not good enough, as all corporate sales directors are. Right? And so I think the biggest aha moment for me was first becoming aware of my abilities and talents. So I work with clients on, when I do one-on-one coaching, Strengths Finder stuff. And so in the process of developing those programs, I had to complete them for myself. And I was like, oh, this is what I do that is different than what maybe someone who was a higher performing sales manager than me, my corporate job, they don't teach like I do. They can't spot patterns like I do. Maybe they get people fired up better, but it was different. And so becoming aware of my own abilities and weaknesses, I think, was really important. But the other big thing was just when people were like, you're the real deal, I was like, I believe you. And I think that was really, really big. Honestly, most of it's a blur. The experience was relatively traumatizing, which means a lot of the memories are just like now starting to come back as we go and rebuild. I just remember being like, it's like the savior complex, imposter syndrome thing. I was like, I just ruined these people's lives. My business partner was like, he just laughed at me and said, you're not that powerful. And that was a defining moment for me, because that savior complex, that hyper responsibility, almost gave me the illusion that I'd control over people's outcomes in a way that I really truly didn't. The fact is, at some point in everyone's career, there's going to be a layoff, a job that doesn't work out. And again, it comes back to this belief, and I was wrong on a lot of things. So I listened to other people and I was like, okay, I believe you. But then I also had to be like, these people that I hired, they're awesome. They took a chance, but they never stopped being awesome. And so because they continue to be awesome, they'll probably be fine. And sure enough, they were. I mean, maybe a blip, right? And they had to like refigure things out. And but for the most part, everyone was so, with the exception of one who was like, "You are a bad person." I'm like, I don't know, maybe if you could sell something that would have been nice, that would have been helpful, right? But for the most part, everyone just got it. They'd seen the revenue numbers. They knew what was happening. They knew they started a small business. They knew they took a risk. And every single person was like, we don't regret it, except for the one. And interestingly enough, almost we've called people back for like even smaller part-time support roles. And they're like, I was hoping you'd call back someday. And so I just think that's really a testament to how we handled a lot of things. So I don't know if that fully answers what I was feeling. I don't know. I mean, I'm a very like, no time for feelings, must produce. So truthfully, I just stuck it all in a compartment, got myself a nice rash, and just tried to survive. I think the hardest part was, you know, I have a hoodie that says "We Sell Hope." I believe that learning how to sell well is the most hopeful thing, right? Because you never have to worry about how you're going to feed your family, the confidence, right? All of that. No matter what happens with this business, I can go get my knives out of the garage and sell them and always be able to support my family, or everyone's looking for a good salesperson. So I have this thing that says "We Sell Hope." And so here I was just laying off people and then needing to show up the next day on camera as like other people's beacon of hope. And that was brutal, to be the sales trainer that, like, for a minute, it was the sales trainer that couldn't sell enough. And it was brutal, except one of the clients who I ended up at her house because her sister does like reflexology and was like, you should come. And I was telling her about this and she's like, that's not what happened. And so you can't tell yourself that story. So again, the people that were wise, I just believed them instead of fighting them. Right? And like humbly taking their feedback on the situation because they were smart, experienced, they had a good head on their shoulders, technically had like their businesses had more longevity than I did. And so I just was like, okay, I believe you.
And I want to go back to that moment because you just touched on it then when it was like, you know, you're selling sales training and, you know, you're probably sitting there going, well, again, I'm a fraud because I'm not selling enough or at the rate maybe that you thought that you would be for where you were in your business. And I think a lot of people actually struggle through that. Like, whatever, it might not be sales, but it might be, you know, like lead gen or, you know, like mental health, or like really anything. And sometimes they're the ones who's like, oh man, like I'm not even doing the thing or, you know, or getting the results that I'm promising. Like, talk us through what was going through your mind even at those times. Like, I know that you got out of that, you know, you decide to believe the people who were telling you, no, that's not the case. But for a long time, I'm sure that was weighing really heavily on you.
Well, it's a constant battle, right? Except I think there's a few things today, and this won't be in order. And I mean, I don't think I can remember really all that well, but it was a lead gen problem. It was not a conversion problem. We are conversion specialists, not lead gen specialists. Right? We are great at referral generation, business collaboration, right? Like that kind of stuff. But like I can be okay right now publicly saying, we will help you convert the leads you have. Right? We're dangerous enough in lead gen. But I'm not going to show up and pretend that like that is my bread and butter, because the marketing people, their bread and butter is not conversion. Right? That's why we're so good at business collabs, because most marketing people are like, can we please collab with you? Because we need our clients to convert the leads they have, and they can't do a freaking sales conversation to save their life. And so I think some of it has to do with that. I don't really know exactly, except our social media strategy has been really good. So my coach taught me, you know, leadership vulnerability is critical. And I remember when my coach first taught me about imposter syndrome, and she's like, the better you get, the more you have it. And I remember feeling a wave of relief over me that I wasn't crazy, that anytime I ran into a problem, it didn't disqualify me, it qualified me. And I remember reading the Zappos book, and Tony say however you say his name, I know he's passed away since, but every single business owner has a moment in which they're maxing their lines of credit, selling their house, right? All of those things. And so what was it about me that I was so arrogant to think I would not walk through all of that? And I remember there was this moment where I was like, I don't know, I had Pandora on, and it was like faith-based radio, and there's a song that was like, break my heart for what break yours. And it's kind of cheesy, but I was like, I had this moment where I was like, oh, I need to understand this. I can't help people walk through their challenges if I've had none. What kind of an a-hole would I have been if I would have stayed at that trajectory, right? If I would have stayed at that trajectory at this particular point, I would have a $50 million business and no failures. And I would have no compassion, right? No ability to go and do the rehabilitation coaching that is necessary. I wouldn't be able to actually meet people where they're at. I would be so far away from my original purpose, which would be to give people hope. And so what I came to the realization is every mistake that I've made, there's redemption on the other side of it, right? There's, you say that you either win or learn. Most people don't learn, right? They just shove it under a rug, internalize it, get a rash, and keep moving. And what I've been really intentional about is, okay, what's actually happening? First, I need to learn from my business, and then I need to teach. So my clients, yes, they pay for the expertise and the conversion skills and the wording and the processes, but they also pay for every single one of my failures, because now they have access to be able to avoid them. And so now when I have a client, I have one who's probably, I don't know, she's at like 850, 900,000. But I'm like, we need to have predictable lead flow through ads in order to have the staff you want, because we can't just base everything on your personality and your organic. Because then you'll have to lay off your sister, and that's not going to be okay. Right? And so I'm on her, and she's like, it's all going to be fine. We'll keep making sales. And I'm like, 3,000 leads per month, please. If we do not have 3,000 leads per month, here's all the math. Your business is not stable. And so I think it's the redemptive part of all of that that has been really encouraging and exciting, and people have really connected with.
I love how you frame that. That is so important. And it's so important, like I say, for all of us to hear, but really I'm like, for me to hear, because it's hard to go through these things. And, I've been an entrepreneur for well over 10 years, but every time I come across a setback, it still impacts me really, really deeply, even though I feel like I have way more confidence now to be able to get ourselves out of it or to problem solve, but it's still like emotionally and mentally, it still has a really, really huge impact. I'm sure that's the same for you. Like, even now you are, by all objective measures, super successful.
We have profit. We're good.
Yeah. But when you do face those moments when it is a setback, no matter how big or small, like, does it still impact you almost to the same extent, or do you think that you've really...
Well, I'm a moody salesperson, right? So every no sale makes us moody. Every sale is a high. But one of the things my coach taught me when I first started was the impact journal, is write down the names of 3 people you positively impacted that day. And so I keep thinking about this concept of I am here to provide value, not prove value. And proving value is about ego, and providing value is about listening and serving in the best way possible. And so I think there's, just like a routine in the morning. Like I have a journaling routine in the morning to get myself centered and grounded, and making sure, okay, how can I provide value today to these particular people? I use the 5-minute journal app. So at the end of every day, here are the 3 humans I positively impacted. And I know that as long as I'm impacting people every single day, the revenue might go up and down, but it's going to make a difference. And then we just have really strong reflection processes that we've built over time to make sure that we don't end up too far off the, just like in a different world and not looking at everything. We have a strong dashboard, a monthly review process, a quarterly review process. It's too important for me and my business partner. It's our family's livelihood, and so we don't do silly things like, I don't want to look at the numbers, I'm afraid of them, you know. So we have a strong reflection process, and that helps us every single day. But yeah, I mean, the ups and downs, it's like,
oh my gosh. I feel like I just went through a roller coaster.
Yeah, me too.
To
I'm glad this is the first public appearance of that story for sure.
Oh wow! Well, I'm honored. Thank you for sharing that with us at this event.
You're welcome.
It's been amazing to, yeah, and I know that it's going to help so many people as well, because all of us, every single entrepreneur is probably right now in some kind of setback. Might be a small one, but I can guarantee that we all have problems that we need to solve.
Sure.
And so you sharing your story was just incredibly helpful to help us think through it and know that this is our uprising moment. This is us going, you know what, we can handle anything, and we're going to get on the other side of this.
Yeah.
So thank you. I want you to share about the sales confidence training, because you know you sell with a lot of confidence. You talk with a lot of confidence, and I know firsthand that, like, for me, sales is something that I do not feel confident about.
Sure.
But you have something that you can share with people to help them with this.
Yeah, I think a lot of people have just a bad idea of what sales is. They think it's being pushy. We believe that sales is matchmaking a problem with a solution, and that it really is about providing value. We reject all negative stereotypes of sales off the get-go, and we stop asking questions like, am I bothering people? Am I being pushy? Those are just the wrong questions. The real question is, am I providing value with this conversation? Does my sales process have trust, compassion, stability, and hope? And we are the words people. So we're like, most times there's like this mindset piece, but the words don't match the mindset, and it comes out like literally gobbledygook. I'm like, no, we need to say, usually what I do is set up a time to go over this, that, the other thing. You don't have to get it. My part will take 30 minutes. You don't have to get anything. If you see something you like, I'll help you order it. Is that something you'd be open to? Most people don't have the training to be able to put those pieces together. And so you get really positive responses. You get less rejection. Everyone is on the same page. And a lot of it is just like, I have yet in 8 years to meet another sales trainer. An honest to God wording person who can build a sales conversation that will like convert at a beginner skill level. And that's the thing, is most entrepreneurs are at the beginner skill level, and the training out there is strategic and high level, and they're like, go talk to people, go have a sales conversation. And you're like, okay, but do you know the detail of how to set up a price context? Probably not. But do you know the science of how many options you should be showing so that you don't run into one option aversion, right? Like, do you know? Of course you're not confident because you had like 5 minutes of training. When I learned how to sell knives, they put us through 15 hours of sales training. And I would be hard pressed, and this was for selling knives, I would be hard pressed to meet an entrepreneur that has gone through 15 hours of sales training, and you're trying to figure out, why can't I sell? Well, duh. Sorry, now I'm getting ranty. I'm like, of course you're not confident. Like, I have kids. I'm like, oh, I'm not confident about shooting free throws. What do? You go and practice your free throws. Entrepreneur, you're not confident in sales. You're like, oh, I'm going to teach you this technique so that you can sell without selling. Right? That would be like telling my daughter who plays basketball, who's unconfident about her free throws, to say, okay, well, we'll just teach you how to never shoot free throws. That's insane. We would never, ever do that. So my encouragement is to lean in. We started our enterprise in the network marketing field, which is the ultimate beginner. And over the past month, we're now expanding past my one-on-one services into service-based businesses. So coaches, consultants, and all that, jet experts, advisors, anyone that would need to come up with a good offer and is delivering services. So now, yeah, we're going to have all those resources for people, how to do a great sales conversation, how to address concerns proactively so you're not fighting with people, how to set up appointments properly, increase show rate, what goals should you have. I haven't found anything yet.
That's awesome. And
Have
can
you?
you just remind, I don't think to the level that you're talking about. So, I mean, I know people who do sales coaching and things like that, but you know, everything's in the nuance and the detail, right? So what you're talking about sounds like something that everyone on here needs. So just remind us again where to get that. That's emergesalestraining.com/
SC group, stands for Sales Confidence Group. So that's a new Facebook group that we just built about a month ago. And we're running workshops in there and coaching programs and putting together online courses specifically. So far, it's been really, really great.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Tasha. This was a joy to speak with you. And I think everyone on here has learnt so much from you.
Thank you.
Wow. What a powerful conversation with Tasha. I don't know about you, but I feel like I just went on an emotional roller coaster ride. There are so many takeaways from this episode, but I think the biggest one for me is this idea of providing value, not proving value. It's such a simple shift in mindset, but it can make all the difference in how we approach our businesses and also our sales conversations. Now, I want to hear from you. What's one thing from this episode that resonated with you or inspired you to keep going? Let me know via the show notes or in the comments below. If you're watching on YouTube, I want to hear from you. Okay. And if you're looking to level up your sales game, don't forget to check out Tasha's Sales Confidence Group on Facebook. We're going to leave the link for that in the show notes and the description as well. And if you want to get into the nitty-gritty of implementing my entire content marketing system, the Honey Trap Method, then have a listen to my limited series podcast called Content Marketing Tips, because I break down each piece for you through each episode. All right. You can find that in the show notes or the description too. Thank you so much for joining us. My name is Deidre Shen, and as always, stay intelligently lazy.